the Nairobi Stock Exchange, where they've just launched the Growth Enterprise Market Segment Trading Board, which is for small and medium enterprises. These employ about 75% of workers in Kenya, and the board aims to open a new investment window and provide funding opportunities for startup businesses. Joining us for more insight is Donald Ouma. He is Head of Product Development at the NSE. Donald, thanks for your time. We have to be quick about this because we lost time because of the lines. So you guys are now bringing in essentially what is the market for small companies to list on the stock exchange. What took you so long?
What took us so long?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was just the time that was, the time is right now for us to do this.
Okay.
We involved the authority, the Capital Markets Authority, which is the regulator for the capital markets, the stock exchange, and the depository, which came up with a technical team to develop the rules and regulations. And we looked at international best practice. So we looked at the JSE, the London Stock Exchange, AIMS market, the Canadian market, and Egypt's NILEX market, and came up with the rules and regulations.
Right. I asked the question about what took you so long because this has been ongoing in other markets which have been established, of course, before you. So perhaps you, as you say, you needed to get best practice. Let's talk about the numbers here. How many are you aiming to list by the end of the year?
5, at least 5 on this market segment.
And have you already started some of the preparatory work to get these companies on board? And how many have you been talking to?
We are a sponsor of something called the Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Initiative, which looks at the fastest growing mid-sized companies in Eastern Africa. We've been a sponsor for the last 3 years. So we are looking at these companies as potential issuers on this market segment.
Right.
There's also been a recent regulation passed for natural resources companies looking to list or to do business in Kenya. They have to get a 35% local equity component. And we think one of the ways of doing it is by listing on this market segment.
Yeah. Now, I've been looking at the criteria for listing on the stock exchange. Now, he's talking about a paid-up capital of 10 million shillings, 100,000 in shares, and you're talking potentially about these companies having at least 15% of shares being available for trading for free float. Let me put it that way. But when I look at these numbers and I compare against the other companies like the JSE and the way they've approached the small segment market, it does appear like your requirements are a little light, or am I misreading that?
Our requirements are customized for the economy of this region, not for the JSE or the South African market. So we're looking at our economy, we're looking at the companies that are going to be operating in this region, and we tailored our listing requirements to suit them. What we have not reduced is the disclosure requirements. So each company would have to have a nominated advisor to advise it during its offer, and also to have it, they will need to have a nominated advisor for the time that they're listed on the market to ensure that they comply with the continuous listing obligations of this market segment and to protect the investor. So the disclosure requirements are just as the other market segments, and we have also included a nominated advisor to advise management and the boards of any companies that list on GEMS.
Yeah, I've got two key concerns. One is the no profitability record required. And then the second one is the requirement for operation of at least a year. I compare to the JSE because it's the closest African market to Nairobi. Now, operation of at least 1 year with no profit history, isn't that risky, particularly for investors who come from outside, especially in an African context where we do know that your market has got a large contingent of retail investors?
Well, the GEMS markets all over the world, whether it's Nairobi or the JSE, does not restrict investment by retail investors. Again, we have registered now 8 nominated advisors whose duty is to ensure that the companies comply with our continuous listing obligations. Yes, the requirements are, in terms of profitability, you're not required to have a profit history And also, you only are required to have been in operation for a year prior to listing or prior to applying to list on this market segment. But what we think will happen is, first what will happen is the companies that will look to list on this market segment will those with a much longer operating history and profit history. Then as the market's appetite for risk and as confidence in this market segment builds, then you'll have much newer companies seeking to list on this market segment. So we don't expect immediately to see companies who have no profitability listing on this market segment, but we think that will happen as confidence in this market builds.